back round the negotiating table with the United States. Ultimately, this is how we will ensure a complete, verifiable and irreversible end to Iran's nuclear programme. And we are using every diplomatic lever to support this effort. I'm in close contact with leaders across the region, and yesterday I spoke to the Emir of Qatar to express our solidarity after Iran's reckless attack on the Al Adaya base. While we work to lower the temperature in the Middle East, we will not for a moment lose focus on Ukraine, whose people endured further Russian strikes overnight and for many nights consecutively. Nor will we lose focus on the rising threats to Euro-Atlantic security. In the face of those threats, I've long argued that this is the moment to unite, for Europe to make a fundamental shift in its posture, and for NATO to meet this challenge head on. And that is what we have done today. With the UK at the forefront, NATO allies have agreed a new defence investment pledge, raising defence and security spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, making NATO stronger, fairer, and more lethal than ever. This includes military spending, as well as vital investments in our security and resilience, like protecting our cybersecurity and our energy networks. Allies also agreed that because the threats are constantly evolving, we will review this pledge in 2029. The new national security strategy sets out our plans and priorities across these areas. So under the NATO new definitions, we estimate that we will reach at least 4.1% of GDP in 2027, keeping the British people safe and strengthening our leadership in NATO even further. This summit has sent a decisive message to aggressors, and that must be matched by our commitment to Ukraine. And that's why I've announced this week that the UK is providing hundreds more air defence missiles to protect the Ukrainian people, paid for not by the British taxpayer, but with money from frozen Russian assets. Last year, NATO allies pledged 40 billion euros of military aid for Ukraine. This year, Europe, Canada, and our Indo-Pacific partners will match that 40 billion commitment euros again for 2025. We are no longer just talking about burden sharing, we're delivering it in every area. And now we must seize the opportunity this creates to use this investment as a job-creating machine to renew our country, making working people better off and strengthen our security at the same time. So today, as the latest in a series of new investments, I can announce that we will procure at least 12 F-35A fast jets, and we will make these UK aircraft available to bear nuclear weapons if necessary. Our continuous at-sea deterrent has long been declared to NATO alliance. And with this announcement, we're going further in response to growing nuclear threats. It marks the return of the RAF to nuclear deterrence for the first time in 3 decades, representing the biggest strengthening of our deterrence posture in a generation. And it will support no less than 20,000 jobs across the United Kingdom. Our commitment to NATO is unshakable, and so is our determination that greater security for our country must go hand in hand with better lives for working people. Thank you. And now I will take some questions from the media, and I think I'm starting with Beth.
Thank you. Prime Minister, you say that you will not lose focus on Ukraine, but there's no condemnation of Russia's war on Ukraine in the joint communique. something that has been in previous statements when Biden was in the White House. Is that because President Trump didn't want NATO to condemn Putin? And are you disappointed by that? And on your welfare bill back home, it's shaping up to be a huge test of your authority. If you can't govern your party, how do you govern the country? Thank you.
Well, on the question of Ukraine, the position in NATO has not changed, nor has my position changed. In fact, over the last couple of days, I would say in my discussions with leaders, there's been a real resolve that now is the time to push again to get Putin to the table for the unconditional ceasefire. President Zelensky has, for many weeks now, indicated his willingness to go to an unconditional ceasefire. Now is the time for Putin, who's been dragging his heels, to come to the table. And there's been a lot of discussions with other leaders about seizing that moment to push forward on that initiative. On the question of welfare reform, we're committed to reforming our welfare system. It doesn't work, it traps people, and it has to be reformed. And it also has to ensure that we've got a welfare system that is fit for the future. And that is why there will be a vote, and we will press ahead with the reforms. Thank you. Can I go to Chris Mason?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. The benefits bill is soaring and will be, even if you were to pass these measures that now appear to be in jeopardy. You turned on the winter fuel payment, and now you're talking about the prospect of tens of billions of pounds of extra funding for defence over the next decade, alongside that promise that you have to not put up taxes on those you describe as working people. Are those things in combination really credible? And if I may, opposition to your benefits changes is growing. Are you willing to compromise? Thank you.
Let me take the funding position head on, because we made a commitment in our manifesto to raise defence spending to 2.5% during the course of the Parliament. We then brought that forward to 2027, 2028. And as I did that, I announced where the spending would come from, and it comes from the Overseas Development Aid Fund, not from tax rises. And the same challenge was put to me then, that we would have to tax rise, and we didn't. We made the difficult but right decision in relation to that funding. We have a commitment in our manifesto not to raise taxes on working people, and we will keep to that commitment. But it is right that I reiterate that the first duty of the Prime Minister is to keep the country safe, and that is a duty I take extremely seriously. These are volatile times, and I'm really pleased here at NATO that has been the mood of the summit, and this has been a strengthening of NATO, not just numerically with new members coming this time for their second summit, but a stronger NATO, and a real sense of resolve and purpose coming out of today with the commitment in relation to the 5%. In relation to the welfare reforms, we have got to make the reforms to our system. It isn't working as it is. It doesn't work as it stands for people who desperately need help to get into work, or for people who need protection. It is broken. We were elected in to change that which is broken, and that's what we will do, and that's why we will press ahead with reforms. Thank you. That's why we're going to press ahead with the reforms. Catherine from GB News. Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. Prime Minister, you're making massive pledges on defence going forward into the mid-2030s. But looking at the polls and looking at the number of Labour MPs rebelling at the moment, how confident are you of being around into the next Parliament to implement these plans and also leading Labour into the next election? Thank you.
Very confident. We were elected in absolutely clearly saying we needed 10 years of a national renewal. A decade of national renewal was what we were elected into with a huge majority. It is really important that I lead from the front and take the long-term decisions about the future of our country. And that is why we've made these defence commitments. We are living in a more volatile world. I think everybody in the country accepts that. We have to rise to that challenge. And it is right that we set it out over a number of years, so we get the trajectory right and the balance right, and that's what we're doing. That's what I'm committed to doing, and that's what I'm committed to seeing through, because that is the fundamental duty of the Prime Minister. I should add that hand in hand with the increased spending on defence goes the investment in jobs in our country. Good, well-paid, secure jobs in defence, measured in the many, many thousands across the country. And when you take into account the supply chains, the small businesses that are going to be involved, then every part of the country will benefit economically from the investment that we are making. And of course, as you would expect, I've had numerous discussions with other leaders here about joint work on procurement, manufacturing and building of capability. And we have a reputation that goes before us as a partner that other countries want to work with, and that will bring even more money into our economy. So I'm very pleased that we are seen in that way by our colleagues and seen to be leading with other countries wanting to work with us. Thank you very much, Catherine. I've got Andy.
Thank you very much, Andy Bell, 5 News. Prime Minister, in the last few days, President Trump has launched a unilateral attack on Iran, barely giving you any notice. On his way here to this summit, he wasn't able to give a straight answer about whether he believed in the principle of mutual defence within the alliance. Is he really a reliable ally you can trust?
Yes, we work very closely with the United States. We have done for many years. Our teams are constantly talking to each other, as they were throughout last week. You will have observed that after I got back from Canada at the G7, I went straight into a COBRA meeting. The purpose for that was to ensure that we were ready for whatever might happen, including a strike by the US. That was of significant importance to me because, of course, in many bases across the Middle East, we are co-located with the US, and therefore we were already taking contingency measures last Tuesday because I wanted a high level of assuredness and to be assured personally that we had in place all the necessary measures to deal with whatever the contingency may be. And we were talking to and given notice by the US of their intentions all during the course of last week, and we talked to them all of the time. That is the nature of the relationship between us. That is what's endured for 80 years, and it's as strong now as it's ever been. Thank you very much. I've got David from Mail. David.
Thanks, Prime Minister. On welfare, why have you so spectacularly failed to read the mood among your MPs over this issue? Is it because, as your critics suggest, you don't have the political nous and judgment required for the top job? And just another one on military matters, if I may. It's Armed Forces Week this week, but there's growing concern among veterans about your government repealing the Northern Ireland Troubles Legacy and Reconciliation Act. They fear it will spark a witch hunt against veterans who served in Northern Ireland because it'll end immunity against prosecution. If you care about our armed forces and veterans, why are you opening them up to a legal witch hunt, and will you reconsider repealing that legislation?
Well, look, on welfare, there's a pretty united front in saying we need reform. And you won't find many Labour MPs who are not accepting we need reform. So we're absolutely on the page with them. The question is, how is that reform carried out? And that is why we put forward the provisions in the bill in relation to how we modernise and make fairer and efficient and sustainable our welfare system. And that is what we were elected in to do. We were elected in to change and to deal with and mend that which was broken. That was the mandate that everybody stood on at the last election. And if I may say so, many people predicted before the election that we couldn't read the room. We hadn't got the politics right, and we wouldn't win an election after 2019 because we lost so badly. That was the constant charge at me at press conferences like this, and we got a landslide victory. So I'm comfortable with reading the room and delivering the change the country needs. We've got a strong Labour government with a huge majority to deliver on our manifesto commitments, and that's the work that we did over many years to win the election. Now we start the work over many years to change the country. Having changed the party, we now change the country. And is it tough going? Are there plenty of people and noises off? Yes, of course. There always are, there always have been, there always will be. But the important thing is to focus on the change that we want to bring about. In relation to Northern Ireland, obviously, this is an issue which has been a serious issue for many years. As you know, I worked in Northern Ireland for 5 years, so I know firsthand just how significant and important these issues are. We are in talks and discussions about how we resolve this issue. It's not straightforward, but I hope we can come to a satisfactory outcome. Thank you, David. Alex from Bloomberg.
Thanks, Prime Minister. President Trump has just said in a session with NATO leaders that something has to be done about the situation in Ukraine because, in his words, it is totally out of control. Does that give you a bit of optimism, a bit of confidence that he does now want to make some progress on Ukraine? Do you think he is going to get tough on Russia, and when?
I think it's fair to say the mood of pretty well all participants in the session in NATO that we've just had in the summit was, on the one hand, of sort of positivity and resolve and purpose in relation to the commitment we've made and the strength and unity of NATO, but at the same time recognising that we need to now push harder on Ukraine, and I think that reflects the mood in the room, and that it's time for Putin to come to the table. And so that's been the subject not only of the discussions in the summit, but actually of many of the discussions over dinner last night and in the margins, as you would expect. And certainly my position is, and has been for some considerable time now, that Putin must stop dragging his heels and get to the table, and all of our discussions have been urging that outcome. Thank you very much. And Lizzie from Mirror.
Thank you. Prime Minister, the National Security Strategy yesterday said that the British public need to actively prepare for war on home soil. Should ordinary people be thinking seriously about Cold War-style preparations? And on welfare, your spokesman in London has been making the case that it is moral for MPs to vote against the welfare reforms. Are the 120 Labour MPs who are backing the amendment immoral?
Well, let me deal with the homeland threat, because it is a mistake to think that the only threat we face is external and far off. We do face threats at home all of the time. On a daily basis, there are cyber attacks that have to be dealt with and are being dealt with. They are ever more sophisticated, and we need to have the capability to deal with them. Equally, in relation to energy, that has been weaponised quite obviously in the last few years. You can see that in what's happened in Ukraine, and also on the question of counter-terrorism and state-backed actions in our country that are a very big threat, with very many attempts to penetrate our systems having been dealt with by our security and intelligence services. But the fact that they are very good at their job shouldn't detract from the fact that that is a real threat to our country, which we have to take seriously. And that is why it's in our strategic defence review, is why I've always felt it should be part of what we consider to be the defence of our country. A cyber attack is an attack on our country by our adversaries quite openly. And Russia and Iran are carrying out those attacks on a regular basis. And we have to be prepared for them. In relation to welfare, the argument I would make is that it is a Labour government that should reform welfare. If the welfare system isn't working for those that need it, and it's not, it's a Labour government that should make it work for the future. And just as it was a Labour government that created the welfare system in the future, it falls to this Labour government to make sure we've got a welfare system that's sustainable for the future to come. So much like we did on health, we created the health service, and now we have to ensure that it's fit for the future. Same with welfare. That is a progressive argument, that is a Labour argument, and it's the right argument to make. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
think it's a long walk home.
Do you want me just maybe look at the colours for the past 24 hours? So last night I was happy when